It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 16th edition of School of Tomorrow events, Guardians of the Future, Shaping Tomorrow with Generative AI. The non-profit SOT event series was launched by Beacon House in 2000 to engage global communities in conversations that shape the future of schools and societies. I would like to thank Google for Education, the lead sponsor for SOT 2023, and their partner TechValley, our titanium sponsor UBL. Other key sponsors include My Backpack, MK Books, Allied Bank Limited, Habib Bank Limited, Wateen and Interwood. We also thank our SOT supporters, including Paramount Books, Nestle Pure Life, who have contributed to this year's event. My name is Sadia Chand, and I'm the branch head at Beacon House F74 campus. Please take a moment to note these important points. Please ensure your cell phones are silent. In case of an emergency, the exit point is at the back. Please stay calm and follow directions. Please use the SOT app to scan the QR code and feedback. Share your thoughts on social media using the hashtag Guardians of the Future and SOT 2023. In case of assistance, our ushers are here to help you. For questions, please either use the flashcards or the mobile app. Now, this is a session regarding a workshop, so this is going to be an interactive session. I would like to introduce the facilitator, Professor Kim Insley. She is an associate professor with leadership roles at the IOE, part of the Department of Curriculum, Pedagogy and Assessment, led by Professor Arthur Chapman. She is the program lead for the MA and Graduate Diploma in Advanced Educational Practice and oversees an online program for teachers' development. Kim's work includes international teacher education, consultancy, professional development in various countries. She also designs courses for teachers and promotes university education. Ms. Kim, I welcome you to the SOT 2023. Now the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much indeed for that introduction. And I'm hoping that everyone can see my presentation title and the Menti code to help with this interactive presentation. I'm delighted to be here and I hope that all goes well. I know it's new technology for you. It's also new technology for me. I've actually never presented using only Mentimeter before, which is what I'm doing today. So as was explained, I'm an associate professor at the UCL Institute of Education. That's where the IOE is the Faculty of Education and Society for UCL. The IOE in its own right is #1 in the world for education. Yes, we beat Cambridge, Oxford, and even MIT over in the States. That's because our research is held at a great deal of depth. We beat those numbers by those other faculties by a very high margin. My presentation today is aimed to share with you my most recent research, which is actually still ongoing. It is a case study of the PGCE teacher development, a program which, as has been explained, is fully online, but designed to bring research about teaching to teachers wherever they are. We have the third cohort from Beacon House studying the program. They started in September of this year, and they should complete in September of next year. The second cohort started last March, and they're completing the second module at the moment, finishing in March next year. The first cohort have actually fully completed and will hopefully be invited for the presentations later. The program is an internationally accredited award. So that means it demonstrates participants' ability against agreed international criteria, but it does not include qualified teacher status in the UK, QTS. Now that's for a very good reason. We are attempting to avoid and move away from a colonialist approach to our learning and teaching. That is telling you how to do it. That's because the programme uses your knowledge. You're already experts in learning and teaching, and those of your own critical friend, the one you choose to support you, to apply your understanding of theories of learning and teaching in your context. So for the session today, you will probably need notebook, note paper and pens, and your smartphone. I've been asked to make the presentation as interactive as possible, and to do that, we're going to use Mentimeter. It's an online tool. There's a QR code which will take you to the website. You go to menti.com and enter that code. And then you will be logged in as a participant from your smartphone. That code will still be at the top of every slide as we go through. So don't worry, type in the menti.com and type in the code as shown. Once you're there, if you click on the like icon, which I think is at the bottom there, you should be able, yes, there's one person clicked on, you should be able to show me that you're there. So click on that like icon. So while that's going, I was going to practice using the tool and that's no good. So let me talk to you a little bit about teacher education and the area I am researching at the moment. I'm looking at the work of someone called Jean Murray. She developed a term called second order practice. Now, first order practice is what all of you teachers do in the classroom. You teach each other, you share with each other, you work with the students in the classroom. What you do with the students is first order practice. Second order practice, as Murray suggests, is what we do when we are working in teacher education, when we are working with teachers to actually help them develop their practice. That's second order practice. Now, it's more complex because those second order practitioners, the teacher educators, are involved in both the processes of both producing and reproducing what happens in school, the discourses and practices of schooling, as Murray calls it, but also working with you to help you work with your students. So you can see there's sort of a hierarchy of order in this. Hence it's called second order practices. Now, my learning objectives for this session were to work with you to develop an understanding of the efficacious teacher educator. That's the successful teacher educator, the educator who works well with other teachers to support their learning in the classroom. I wanted to share my research development on a concept of what I'm calling distance and online learning. That's the two things together. And I wanted to reflect on how understanding of learning for teachers can enhance student outcomes. But what it might be good for you to do now is just, and I know you can't see the learning planned, is to just write down what you want to get out of this activity today, what you want to get out of thinking about teacher education. I will send you all of the PowerPoint once it's finally finished, because I did it on Mentimeter, and unfortunately it's more difficult to send that. I'm wondering if Zohaib has received it and whether he can present it. So I can see that at least 2 people have liked it, but that might just be Zohaib and me.
So, no, you'll see more inshallah in a minute. We've just got the QR code and they'll be scanning it up.
Excellent. Oh, lovely. Yes, people are beginning to come in. There are 11, 13. We can see them on, well, I can certainly see them on my presentation. That's wonderful. And a great relief to me, I have to say. And probably to Zohaib too. Excellent. So I've moved it on to the next. Zohaib, can you move on to the next screen, please? And there's a question on there. How is the conference going? And what I'd like you to do is use one word. Not one letter, one word. It is anonymous. No one else can...
Can you hear me?
See. Yes, I can.
All right, so what we've done is we've made the QR code from the Menti link and the audience has now scanned it. However, I cannot control the Menti PPT. You can from your end, I guess.
I am, yes.
Great.
So certainly people are in there and they're now answering the questions. So it might be on their smartphones that
Yes,
they all see everything.
Everybody can see that, yeah.
Great, so people are saying pretty good, wait, right, it's amazing. Keep going, oh, lovely, we're getting, you can repeat words that others have said. Of course, as a word cloud, it would show the bigger, show words that are informative as being much bigger. Good. So we've had 11 people. I believe there's over 100 of you in there. So that's lovely. Lots more people. So the biggest word showing I can see is amazing. And that is fantastic. I would really love to show you the word cloud because it's quite exciting to see. Oh no, great has overtaken amazing. Great is better. So this is clearly a very useful conference for you. I'm going to move you on to the next slide. And on your slides, actually, I believe on your phones, you will be able to see my slides, even if you can't see them. Good, yes, I can see. This is what Murray, I was talking about Jean Murray and what she says, that second order practitioners, and she wrote about it in her PhD writing in 2002, are involved in the process of both producing and reproducing the discourses and practices of schooling. Now, she goes on to say that they do that with and for their students, and the producing and reproducing of academic discourses about education as their discipline or subject in. Now, HE is higher education. She's using that term. Now, what that means is that when you're talking to teachers, instead of just telling them how to do it, as a teacher educator, I actually do the pedagogy, the first order pedagogy. I actually practice it. I engage with them. I give activities. I interact. And then we step back and look at what I've done. So at one level, you could say, today I've done this activity with you, and stepping back and looking at what you have done in talking about the different things. Now, these are my learning objectives. And I'll read them so that everyone can actually know what they are. They're to develop the understanding of efficacious teacher education. I'm deliberately using the word efficacious, whereas most other literature uses the word effective teacher education. If I just put up these 3 learning objectives, I'm breaking my own argument. I'm ruining my argument. It's not supposed to be teacher-led. It's supposed to be interactive. So here's another example of interactivity, and you could probably also adapt it in your classroom. I'm going to ask you how you will, and I will, know you've achieved these 3 learning objectives.
Kim, people can now see the Mentimeter on the larger screen, right?
Excellent.
They can see you, and they can also see what's happening on the Mentimeter on their phone screens as well, and on the larger screen.
That's lovely. So we're back in business. That's excellent. So you can see all 3 learning objectives. I don't need to read them out as such. Talk to the person next to you. What will you do to achieve these learning objectives? What will you see? What will you be doing in this conference to know that you have achieved? What will be, and the word is success criteria. So please talk to the person next to you. I can't see you, so I don't know if you're talking, but I hope you are. In some classrooms, these have been used to learning objectives. Teachers use the acronym WALT. We are learning to, W-A-L-T. And the success criteria are WILF, what I'm looking for. I'm not over keen on WILF because it implies it's all teacher-led. It's what I'm looking for. I think success criteria is important with you knowing what you are looking for as a person who's learning. So I'd also say it for my students in the classroom, even very young children. How will I know you have achieved? So think about what you will be able to do at the end of this presentation that you cannot do now. Write some of these ideas down because I want you to share them in a moment. I'm going to put them up on, I'm going to move this slide on in a moment. By talking to each other using peer, you feel more confident too about what you're saying, particularly because you can't ask me, what do you mean, miss? You can ask your colleague, what do you think she means? And you can feel more confident in doing it. And there's no wrong answers. So here we are, I've moved it on. You can submit multiple responses. You just type them on in your screen, having discussed with your peer. Now type them into your phone. You can write as many as you want, and again, they're anonymous. No one can know who is doing this. Lovely. I will be able to learn how to implement the things I will learn in this session practically. Excellent. We should be able to explain it in simple words by using AFL tools. Individual feedback of students or written tasks. Oh gosh, there's lots of ones coming in. It's interesting that a lot of people are saying through AFL. I'm sure you all know that AFL stands for Assessment for Learning. You might have to move the Mentimeter up a bit so that we can see all of the different things happening. I hope you can see that some of the activities I am doing with you now are using assessment for learning. I've asked you to think about your success criteria. That's an assessment for learning approach. I've asked you to talk to a peer before you did that. That's an assessment for learning approach. There are some really good submissions coming up here. And it is interesting to try and do this with your students in the classroom, because students in the classroom frequently think they've got to do it right for you, whereas actually learning is about them, not you. I was talking with Dylan William recently. Now, Dylan William is one of the gurus who wrote about assessment for learning. And one of the things he said was he wishes he didn't call it AFL, Assessment for Learning. He wishes he'd called it Assessment for Teaching, which is a very different way of thinking about it. So I am so pleased. There's loads of, I've got over 38 responses here. Thank you very much indeed. Those are really great. I'm going to move us on to the next slide, because it is always important as a researcher to set out your own position. And this is my pedagogical approach. So my approach is that learning is constructed through process within different subject areas and through interaction with the environment, involving teachers and other learners, which Vygotsky and colleagues talk about, Watkins and colleagues talk about, and Illerus, who's I like his approach to learning, talks about. It results in learning being dynamic and changing, informed by reflection within a community or even communities of practice. Now, I put the reference there. This is actually my statement. It comes from a doctoral assignment I wrote last year. So currently it's unpublished, but it does belong to me and cannot be copied. And that's just a warning, because it will appear in Turnitin, because just like other places, our doctorate, we all have to use it. I'm hoping that that's relatively clear for you. It's quite complex, isn't it? It's because my pedagogical approach uses a lot of different things. It uses interaction. It uses lots of discussion and talking with different people. Now, here is the term efficacious. Much of the literature uses the term effective, but the word effective is very much a governmental word. Governments want to prove that what they are doing, the money they're spending in schools, gives outcomes that parents and voters in particular would be pleased with. So I explored what the literature and research said about effective professional development, but I've rejected it because it implies there's a simple solution. And there isn't a simple solution. If there were, we'd all be millionaires. Learning is very complex. It's affected by lots of things, dependent on context, circumstances. So what works in one country doesn't work in another country, which is why colonialism is wrong. For us to say, do it this way, is wrong, because you are the experts in your own country. Even one classroom, what you do in one classroom may not work in another classroom, another similar classroom. And we have to remember that what works for one student may not work for another. So I use the term efficacious because measuring effective is very difficult. Efficacious relates to being effective, therefore, within those complex contexts. So this was something that I produced in analysis of all the literature. Simply put, I identified 4 elements that will be present in effective, what I'm now calling efficacious professional development. And those 4 terms are at the top: features, forms, key players, and factors. They describe the pedagogic types. Features and forms particularly describe the pedagogy types. The key players are those who are important in ensuring that these are available, because actually without key players, efficacious professional development isn't going to work. And the different factors are there which may affect the reception and outcome of the professional development. Things like culture, policy. It's all very well saying be interactive with the children in your classroom, but if your government says you've got to teach like this, that's much more difficult to do. So I use this table to identify the potential success of the PGC Teacher Development Programme, recognising even these cannot be achieved, none of these can be achieved unless the participants are engaged. I can't unpack it all in this short presentation, so let me show you in more depth just one example. But first, more interaction. Oh, lots of you ready. Good. What do you understand by the phrase critical friend? So I'm asking you, there should be 4 options ready. Can you see the options? What do you understand by the term critical friend? I think you have to click the activity. Oh yes, people can see it now, but no one is. Good. Lots of people putting in. Actually, I'm being unfair. I think all of them are correct at one level, but the bluntness of this tool doesn't allow for the nuance of the question. For the programme, we've written a whole booklet for the critical friend, so you can't describe it in just one term. And we believe that the critical friend, that booklet, is an example of effectiveness, and that the critical friend themselves, so they're not part of the course, there's someone, each participant teacher on the course chooses to be with them, is an example of effectiveness or efficacious in the following way. And this, the next slide, shows the role of the critical friend with the elements highlighted from my analysis to show this is what the critical friend does. So actually, this shows the real complexity of learning and of measuring efficacious professional development for teachers, because it's in all, there's an element there in all of the features that the role of the critical friend plays in my work. That in the programme, they model effective learning and teaching strategies. They observe, they collaborate, they're doing coaching and mentoring, they're doing formative assessment, they're a peer, so structured peer support. They're doing professional dialogue and conversations. They are peers, so they're key players, but they're also supporting, particularly, I think, the culture. I suspect there's other elements that they will be supporting as well, but it is more difficult to show those as we go through. It's the same table, therefore, with elements that belong to efficacious. So, a little bit now about the analysis of my research. I need to start by explaining my research approach. I used an analysis to find the hidden reality of what really goes on. You can observe, you can ask questions, you can ask open-ended questions, you can do lots of things, but why things are actually happening, which is the research I'm trying to do, is much more difficult. So first of all, the process of the analysis is very much still ongoing. My approach is what I call pseudo action research. Now, action research is a particular practitioner methodological approach. It has to have 4 things available in it. It has to have change, so you have to plan to change something. It has to have cycles. It has to have co-researchers who can be the participants you're doing the change with in your practice. And it has to have you as the insider researcher. So those 4 elements are very important in action research. A lot of what is called action research does not always have those 4 elements in. So when I do action research, I work with the participants of my practice. The reason this case study is not action research and why I'm calling it pseudo action research is because I'm not changing anything. The practice is already happening. I've already written with my colleagues the program. It's already going out. So I'm not changing anything, but it does have cycles of action, data collection, and it does have participants. So I see the participant teachers and my colleagues, the tutors, as co-researchers with me. And of course, I'm very much an insider researcher. The 3 cycles Started with, the first one was semi-structured interviews with tutors. Then I did a document scrutiny. I scrutinized documents from the program, but also material that students who had opted into the participant teachers who had opted into the research, I scrutinized their portfolios and their essays. And then that's the second cycle. And the third cycle, which I've just conducted, was focus groups working with participant teachers and asking them about their thoughts. So that gives me raw data, which I group and then form codes to generate themes. But I'm also using a critical approach, critical realism, as to theorize my learning. And this is critical realism. I've developed this sort of diagram to show you what it's about. Roy Basker, I shared a room with him at the IOE for a year or so. He was a very, very clever person, a world scholar status. He developed the concept of critical realism. I have to say that when I shared the room with him, he used to talk to me, and much of what he said went right over the top of my head. I didn't understand what he meant. But I'm beginning to understand a little. His argument is that there are three domains. The empirical domain, which is how we know things. So we can measure, we collect data. And for my research, it's action, research, and ethnography are part of those. Then there's the actual domain, what it actually is. The PG, postgraduate certificate, professional graduate certificate in teacher development, is effective CPD, and I've already demonstrated that. But then is the real domain, and this is the domain that is the most difficult to explore, because it's asking the question, why does it happen? And some of the answers to that are in the concepts of second order practice by Jean Murray, your critical friends, and the professional conversations that teachers have together. A way of explaining critical realism, another simple way if you like, that diagram there shows my research, but if you think about a rainy day, we can measure the rain, the empirical, we can collect data about it. How do we know? We can go out, we can measure how much rain is falling, we can see what's happening around, how the effect the rain has on different things. The actual is what it is. You know, if you're stood out in the rain, you can feel it, you get wet, it's dripping on you. You have to wear different clothes. But the real is, why does it happen? And that's an understanding of the science behind it all, and including theory. So actually the real for rain, why does rain fall down, for example, is because of gravity. And gravity is just a theory in science. It's not proven, but we all accept gravity now. And that's how I'm trying to move understand teacher education pedagogies in the real domain. Why do they happen? The efficacious ones, why are they successful? So on my first cycle, when I did semi-interviews with the teachers, I've now moved on to the next slide, I looked at the data and I realised that much of it was in the empirical domain, that the approaches of what we do were actually in the actual domain. So we as teachers, teacher educators observe, present, we have portfolios, we use essays, we have online learning, we have blended learning, distance learning. All these came from my semi-structured interviews from the tutors. The critical friend, the virtual face-to-face activity we do, modelling, research, peer feedback, oral feedback, all of these were really important. How do we know why it happens is through dialogue and discussion, reflection, differentiation, and this is a complex word in English, reciprocity. Reciprocity is that interaction between people as we go. But also in the real domain, there are challenges which may affect our pedagogies: gender, culture, hierarchy, the different roles we play, the language we use, and particularly when I'm working with international teachers for whom English is not a first language, and the experiences people have found. So that table shows the themes and codes that came from my analysis. As I said, it's still going on.
Professor Kim, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Apologies, we're left with 5 minutes, and then we'll
Sorry.
then we'll give further 5 minutes to the audience to ask questions. I have a slip where there are plenty of questions, so we'll be taking those as well. So if you take the next 5 minutes to just wrap the Mentimeter thing up, we can move.
Thank you. Will do. Okay, so that was my document analysis. I'm not going to go through that in any. So here's a little bit more interaction for you. These were statements that came out of my document analysis. They came from participant teachers in the program, and I'd like you to have a go at rating those different statements. So I think you slide things over. You can go, you slide on your screen, you slide over. That's lovely. That's nice. As people interact, you can actually see. I'm presuming you can see the changes. Brilliant. So you like all of them, mainly. I think that the three top ones at the moment are: discussing with colleagues helps enhance my teaching strategies, the internet is a valuable tool for research knowledge, and active learning is only effective if it helps develop students' knowledge. Yes. I'm going to move it on very quickly. Distance learning, this is a definition: activities written down and accessed by students, and these are the written activities for module 1 and 2. And online learning are the use of tools, teacher or student led, to enhance engagement. Now, I was going to get you to share examples, but I'm going to actually move it on because I need to explain distance and online, which is the term that I'm trying to use. You can tap or drag options so to put them in order. Open-ended activities with multiple responses, virtual face-to-face to explain or explore activities using Teams, Zoom or Google Meet, or even something like this now. assessment for learning using peer and self-reflective ipsative feedback, conversations following observation of teaching, and analysis of observations. I don't think anyone is actually... Oh, yes, there we go. Lovely. Conversations, yes. No. I'm going to give you just a few minutes longer to put those in. I've got 1 minute left, I notice. Conversations certainly seems to be one of the most popular. Okay, I'm going to... People are still putting in. Thank you very much. I'm going to move it on, though. This is the almost last slide. These were the learning objectives. I said, these are my success criteria. That responses to interactive activities will use language and terms that show understanding, and they certainly did. Questions asked or comments, and I've got questions. I actually had prepared questions this way. So you can write some in there, or we can do it any other way you want to.
All right,
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Professor Kim. Apologies once again for that earlier hiccup to you and the audience, of course. I have 3 questions here with me. The first one being, kindly elaborate a little more on the term critical realism with examples.
Okay, it's quite a challenging thing to elaborate on that. Critical realism, as I said, it has those 3 domains. You could think about it as an iceberg. You all know the picture of an iceberg? And we're always told, you know, the bit you can see above the water is much smaller, about 10%. The whole rest of it is right down underneath the surface. So another way of thinking about critical realism is that the stuff you can measure is on top, but we have to get into a different dimension to get underneath to measure the depth of the iceberg. And actually, we might not even be able to get right down to the bottom of the iceberg because of the limitations to our ability to get down there. So that's another way of explaining critical realism. It is, I mean, Roy Basker has written a whole range of books. I have to say they are very, very deep and difficult to understand. He is talking in critical realism about 2 aspects of philosophical research. Ontology, which is about things, and epistemology, which is about the nature of things. And he argues that there is and this is hard to say, an epistemological fallacy, that we know about things and we don't know why we know. But for a good example is, you wouldn't, if you were doing research about crocodiles, you wouldn't choose to interview the crocodile because you know its nature. You know that a crocodile can't speak to you. Well, none that I know could. So that's an epistemological fallacy to say that you would use interviewing to look at a crocodile. That's what critical realism is all about, using criticality to understand the reality of what you're looking at.
Thank you so much, Professor Kim. One last
it's
question.
Hard.
Yeah. One last question. Somebody has asked, how can I effectively assess student learning in an online setting?
I think you can certainly observe and see how the student is engaging with you. if you can see them. So of course I have no sense of how interaction is happening here because I can't see you. I can only hear from Zohab, and that's actually been quite a challenge for me in this presentation. How do I assess though? Look at using Mentimeter. I've got a lot of information from all of you about how you feel. No one's names, it's completely anonymous. But I've got information about how you feel about some of the things that were coming out of my data collection. I think the complexity of learning is a major challenge, but slowly discovering new tools, we can use those to help us enhance. Remembering that the assessment about how our students have engaged with something, not what they've engaged, is sometimes more powerful. Does that make sense?
Definitely it does. Thank you so much, Professor Kim. Time's up. And I would also like to thank our audience for attending this session. And thank you, Professor Kim. The audience is definitely clapping for you.
I can hear that. Thank you very much, everybody.
Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.